2008's Metal Gear Solid 4 was yet another example of Hideo Kojima's unique brand of genius. From its 8-bit beginnings on the MSX2 all the way to its last epic adventure on the PlayStation 3 console, Solid Snake and his tactical espionage action have become one of the mainstays of video games, helping to make Konami and Kojima strong brands within the industry. But after making 4 genre-bending blockbuster installments of Metal Gear Solid, what was left for Kojima? Where else could he take the series? As it turns out, that's a question for which we have yet to find an answer. In 2009, Konami released Metal Gear Solid Touch for the Apple iPhone, marking the franchise's first appearance on the device and the App Store, as well as Kojima Productions' first mobile project. Its missions were based on those found in Metal Gear Solid 4 and gave players a touch-based shooter experience. But because of the platform's comparatively limited interface, the stealthy gameplay that had been a series mainstay was missing from the package. A year later, Kojima and his team would return to the PlayStation Portable with Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. This was a direct sequel to Snake's last outing on the PSP, Portable Ops, continuing the prequel storyline started in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. But unlike Portable Ops, Peace Walker would actually be directed by Kojima himself. He planned on handing the production reins entirely over to his team, but eventually decided that, quote, it was still a little too early to leave it completely in their hands. In fact, the project was so important to Kojima that it was originally going to be called Metal Gear Solid 5. But as it drew closer to release, the 5 was dropped. Even still, Kojima called it an MGS5 class game. Peace Walker's story bridged the gap between the prequel storyline and that of the first Metal Gear, revealing how MGS3's hero, Naked Snake, ultimately became the franchise's villain, Big Boss. With such an important story, it was no wonder that Kojima made the campaign insanely huge, featuring over 100 side missions and challenges. Each mission also allowed for cooperative multiplayer, a first for the series. Peace Walker proved that even in a small package, Kojima could still deliver the full Metal Gear experience. And that was proven by the game's critical reception, once again scoring high marks. But because of the PSP's lack of popularity outside of Japan, sales weren't strong. Peace Walker fared more like Metal Gear 2. It was a great title that only a handful of people played. So where did that leave Metal Gear Solid 5? As he had felt so many times in the past, Kojima was ready to leave Snake's world, and this time, he was actually getting out. As production on MGS4 was wrapping up in 2008, Kojima and his team began sketching out ideas for a proposed 5th installment in the series. This time, they planned to focus on the activities of some of the characters introduced in Metal Gear Solid 3. But before getting too far into the game's planning stages, Kojima once again discovered that the team wasn't quite up to the task, explaining in an interview, quote, simply dropping MGS5 on the younger staff was a bit heavy and there was resistance to doing it without my involvement. The project was scrapped. Soon after its cancellation, however, a member of the team suggested a game focusing on Raiden, the character who took over for Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2. While fans had mixed feelings about him after his first appearance, Raiden came back onto the scene in Metal Gear Solid 4, only this time he was a katana-wielding cyborg ninja. Of particular inspiration to Kojima's team was a cutscene in MGS4 where Raiden obliterates a gang of walking tanks by slicing and dicing everything in sight. With that action-packed sequence in mind, the developers had hit upon the idea for the project that would take Metal Gear Solid 5's place, Metal Gear Solid Rising. This new title would give players control of Raiden, with gameplay focusing on his ability to cut through anything and everything he encountered. The story would be a so-called interquel, filling the gaps between Metal Gear Solid 2 and his reappearance as a cyborg. Because Rising would be a side story featuring brand new mechanics, the team was less daunted by tackling the project without Kojima as director and got to work. Unfortunately, they found it hard to make much progress. Because it was still Metal Gear, the staff tried to keep the franchise's trademark stealth elements alive. But the action-based cut-anything concept didn't mash well with sneaking around. Even more troublesome was the fact that giving players the ability to slice through any obstacle made it impossible to create linear levels. Progress on the project slowed to a crawl, then practically came to a stop. Because Kojima had taken on the role of consultant instead of providing a singular guiding voice as the director, Rising was rudderless. The different departments working on it all had different ideas of what the final product should be. Needless to say, it didn't go well. By the end of 2010, Kojima reluctantly decided to pull the plug. But even after canceling Rising, Kojima still wanted the game to see the light of day. His team at Konami, though, had shown that they weren't up to the task. It was time to bring in someone new. At first, he considered some studios outside of Japan, but he reasoned that a game featuring a cybernetic ninja, subjects of particular Japanese specialty, should probably stay in the land of the rising sun. Eventually, Kojima settled on Platinum Games, developers of Bayonetta. Kojima approached Platinum president and CEO Tetsuya Minami at a party and asked if the developer would take a crack at Rising. At first I thought it was a joke, recalled Minami in an interview. Only after Kojima asked him a second time did Minami realize that the offer was really on the table. He accepted the challenge, and Platinum set to work on rebuilding the game from scratch in early 2011. When the developer delivered an impressive alpha build 4 months after taking over the project, which was now being called Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, Kojima and the rest of his team knew the right decision had been made. Platinum dropped the stealth components, focusing instead on the action-packed cutting elements. In addition, the plot was reworked, taking place several years after the conclusion of Metal Gear Solid 4. While no specific release date has been announced, Revengeance is scheduled to come out in the fourth quarter of 2012. And while fans wait for Revengeance to finally arrive, Konami has made sure to keep the hunger for Metal Gear alive. In late 2011, the publisher released the Metal Gear Solid HD collection for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, with a version for the PlayStation Vita coming in summer 2012. The collection gives gamers a chance to experience Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and Peace Walker all in one package, and in glorious high definition. Not only that, but a 3D version of Snake Eater was released for the Nintendo 3DS, showing off the world of Metal Gear in ways that had never been seen before. The Metal Gear franchise changed the face of gaming as we know it. It achieved new heights for cinematic storytelling, inspired the creation of the stealth genre, and even pushed the boundaries of how video games can interact with players. Moreover, Metal Gear helped Kojima himself earn incredible success. In 2011, he was named Vice President of Konami Digital Entertainment, taking a bigger role in steering the company than ever before. But now that Metal Gear has finally found its way out of Hideo Kojima's hands, what's next? Will Kojima ever come back to direct another installment in the series? Will the twice-abandoned Metal Gear 5 actually be created? In November 2011, Kojima said in an interview, quote, "I think we'll probably have to make it at some point, but what that will be, we have no idea." Right now, the future of Metal Gear after Revengeance is something of a question mark for fans and creators alike. But don't be surprised if we hear more about MGS5 sooner than Kojima is letting on. After all, Snake has a tendency to take people by surprise.